Sometimes the safest love feels the most suspicious, not because it is wrong, but because your body learned to trust tension first. You can want peace and still feel bored by it. You can meet kindness and still wait for the part where it disappears. That confusion is hard to explain, especially when nothing bad is happening, yet something inside you stays braced. You answer the sweet text, but your chest tightens anyway. You sit beside someone gentle, and part of you starts scanning for distance. You tell yourself to relax, but the mind that once survived inconsistency does not soften on command. So when love is steady, your system does something strange. It treats calm like missing information. No chase, no guessing, no emotional whiplash, and somehow that can feel less familiar than pain. Because old relationship wounds do not only shape what hurts you, they shape what feels real. If closeness once came with confusion, your heart may connect intensity with meaning. It may mistake unpredictability for depth. That is why healthy love can feel flat at first. Not empty, just quiet in a way your nervous system does not trust. There is no dramatic high to earn. No sudden distance forcing you to prove your worth. And for someone used to emotional uncertainty, that absence can feel unsettling. It removes the pattern you secretly know how to survive. You may even start looking for problems. A slower reply feels heavier than it should. A normal need for space starts sounding like rejection. A calm disagreement feels like the beginning of the end. Not because you are irrational, because part of you is reading the present through older alarms. Old wounds do not always look dramatic in adulthood. Sometimes they look like overthinking a good person. Sometimes they look like losing interest right after someone becomes available. Sometimes they look like pulling back the moment you were treated well. That is the part people rarely admit. Healthy love does not always feel healing in the beginning. Sometimes it feels exposed. Sometimes it feels undeserved. Sometimes it feels almost suspiciously easy. And if you were shaped by love that was inconsistent, withholding, or emotionally hard to read, ease may not register as safety. It may register as a setup, a quiet room before disappointment. So you start waiting for the switch. You wonder when they will change, when they will leave, when they will see too much. You do not always think these thoughts clearly. Sometimes they show up as a mood you cannot explain. You become harder to impress, less responsive, slightly colder right after a tender moment. Not because you felt nothing, because you felt too much, too quickly, and now you need distance to get your balance back. This is where a lot of good relationships get misunderstood. The problem is not always lack of feeling. Sometimes the feeling is so real that it triggers self-protection. You step back because the connection matters, not because it does not. That can look confusing from the outside. You miss them but delay answering. You want reassurance, but act like you do not need it. You crave closeness, then resent how much you care. You tell yourself to be normal, to stop making everything so complicated. But what looks complicated is often a simple old equation. Closeness once meant risk, so your system still adds fear to intimacy. That fear can be subtle. It does not always sound like panic. Sometimes it sounds like, I do not know if I like them that much. Sometimes it sounds like, this feels off, even when nothing is off. Sometimes it sounds like criticism. You notice tiny flaws the second they start being consistent. You focus on how they text, how they laugh, how they word things. Your mind starts building reasons to create emotional distance. Because if you can find something wrong first, you do not have to sit in the scarier question. What if this is good and I still do not know how to receive it? That question hits deeper than most people realize. Receiving healthy love is not just about wanting it. It is also about tolerating the vulnerability of not fighting for scraps anymore. It asks you to stop living in emotional survival mode. And survival mode can feel strangely empowering. At least there, you know your role. Read the room. Notice the shift. Earn the warmth. Brace for withdrawal. But healthy love disrupts that role. It offers presence without making you perform for it. That sounds beautiful in theory. In practice, it can leave a wounded part of you with nothing to do. No one to chase. No mystery to solve. No coldness to decode. Just honesty. Just availability. Just a person showing up in a way that should feel relieving. But if your body was trained in emotional weather, steady sunlight can feel unreal. You keep waiting for thunder. This is why some people feel more chemistry with emotionally unavailable partners. Not because unavailable love is deeper. Because it activates an older emotional language, one their body already speaks fluently. Distance feels magnetic. Mixed signals feel emotionally rich. The uncertainty creates focus. The inconsistency creates longing. The longing gets mistaken for love. Then someone healthy arrives. They are clear, kind, and emotionally present. And instead of feeling fireworks, you feel restless. A part of you starts asking, why am I not more excited? But excitement is not always the best measure of safety. Sometimes excitement is just anxiety with a romantic storyline. That is a hard truth, especially if you spend years calling emotional activation chemistry. Healthy love often moves differently. It is less dizzying, more revealing. It gives you fewer dramatic highs, but it also gives you fewer private crashes. The challenge is that your system may miss the highs before it learns to value the peace. It may call peace boring before it recognizes peace as breathable. So you test it, sometimes without meaning to. You go quiet to see if they notice. You act less interested to see if they chase. You mention leaving before they can. You hide your needs, then secretly measure whether they sense them. These are not games in the shallow sense. They are protective rituals. They come from the fear that direct need will be ignored, dismissed, or used against you. So you test love sideways. But healthy people do not always read hidden fear perfectly. They may respond to your distance by respecting it. And then the exact thing you feared starts happening. Not because they did not care, but because your protection created more distance. That is one of the saddest loops in relationships. The part of you trying not to get hurt can quietly recreate hurt. You close up after a tender conversation. They feel the wall and step back. You read their step back as proof that closeness is unsafe, so the old belief survives another day. This is why old wounds are so convincing. They do not just live in memory. They influence what you notice, what you expect, and what you accidentally help create. They turn fear into a filter. And still, none of this means you are broken. It means your heart adapted intelligently to emotional conditions it did not choose. Self-protection is not stupidity. It is history with good reflexes. The problem is not that you learn to protect yourself. The problem is that old protection can keep running after the danger is changed. So now a healthy person can feel emotionally harder to trust than an unhealthy one. Not because they are unsafe, but because they do not fit your old map. They do not make you work for crumbs. They do not keep you guessing. They answer clearly. They stay warm after conflict. They do not punish honesty with distance. And that can feel deeply disorienting if you were shaped by love that made you earn basic security. Part of you keeps searching for the catch. Maybe you notice it after a good date. They were kind, attentive, open, and real. On the drive home, instead of feeling settled, you feel strangely heavy. Your mind starts inventing reasons not to care. Or maybe it happens in a relationship that is actually stable. They are there but you cannot fully land. You still overread pauses. You still feel lonely next to someone who has done nothing wrong. Because emotional loneliness is not always caused by the current partner. Sometimes it is the distance between your present life and your older emotional wiring. A part of you still does not believe support will hold, so you stay slightly outside the moment, just in case. That is exhausting. It can make love feel like work even when the other person is gentle. It can also create shame. You start wondering why something healthy feels harder than something painful once did. But painful love often gives you a familiar script. Healthy love asks you to write a new one while feeling everything. That is why growth here feels so tender. You are not just learning to choose better people. You are learning to stop treating calm like danger. You are learning to let consistency mean something. And that does not happen all at once. Usually it begins in very small moments. You tell the truth before you feel fully ready. You ask for reassurance without apologizing for having a heart. You notice the urge to shut down and stay present a little longer. You feel the old suspicion rise, but do not hand it the microphone. You let someone be kind without making them prove it 12 different ways. You let one good moment stay good. That matters more than it sounds, because healing in love is often less dramatic than the wound. It looks like not disappearing after being seen. It looks like not turning every pause into a prediction. It looks like realizing that safety can feel unfamiliar before it feels good. That unfamiliarity is not failure. It is the exact edge where change begins. The moment your body says this feels strange, and you stay anyway. Not because you ignore red flags. Not because every calm person is automatically right for you. But because you stop worshiping emotional chaos as proof of passion. You start separating peace from emptiness. You begin to understand something almost nobody says clearly enough. Healthy love can feel wrong when wrong once felt normal. And when that happens, the goal is not to shame yourself for flinching. The goal is to get curious about what your flinch is protecting. Maybe it is protecting the younger part of you that learned not to need too much. Maybe it is protecting the part that expects warmth to be temporary. Maybe it is protecting the part that still believes being lovable means being low maintenance, easy, and never fully honest about fear. But real closeness does not grow through perfect self-control. It grows when honesty becomes safer than performance. When you stop trying to seem unaffected. When you let love meet the part of you that still doubts it. That is not weakness. That is emotional maturity without the mask. Because the strongest thing is not pretending healthy love feels natural right away. The strongest thing is noticing that it does not, and choosing not to run on autopilot. So if healthy love has ever made you uneasy, it does not automatically mean you are with the wrong person. Sometimes it means you are standing in a kind of care your past never taught you how to trust. And maybe that is why it feels so quiet. Not empty, just unfamiliar to the parts of you raised on emotional noise. Give those parts some compassion. They learned from what hurt them. But do not let them write the whole story. Old relationship wounds can explain your fear without deciding your future. Because the love that is right for you may not feel intoxicating at first. It may feel calm, honest, and almost suspiciously simple. It may ask less from your performance and more from your willingness to stay, to breathe, to stop translating peace as danger. And one day, if you let yourself keep learning, that same love may stop feeling wrong. It may finally feel like what love was supposed to feel like all along.